Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer, and today I want to talk to you about a tweet I saw a few weeks ago on Reddit. So basically someone tweeted something about billionaires and it went viral on Twitter and it ended up on the main page on Reddit. So let's first read the tweet. It says, under capitalism, it's normal to let children go hungry, let banks force people out of their homes, let sick people die for lack of access to healthcare. But the idea that billionaires could just be less rich, less poor, no struggling, just less rich is considered insane. I mean, this tweet was everywhere. I even saw my friends sharing it on social media and I was like, oh my God. Now, before we discuss the morality behind this tweet, let's just talk about the logic behind the tweet. Does it make sense? Would their suggestions of making billionaires just a little less rich actually have the desired impact? Now, disclaimer, I'm not an expert in politics or economics, but I still think I can discuss the intention behind the tweet with the knowledge I do have. So this tweet is suggesting that if we just took some of the exorbitant wealth that billionaires have and distributed among the needy, then the world would be a better place, right? And it wouldn't even be that bad for them because they would just be a little less rich. So not that much negative would come to them. Well, what if we took this idea a few steps further? What if we took all of the wealth of all the billionaires in the world, not just the billionaires in the US, but all the billionaires in the world, and divided all of their money among the population of the earth? What would happen? After a quick online search, I found that as of 2019, there were about 2,800 billionaires in the world, and the billionaires' combined net worth was $9.4 trillion. $9.4 trillion across all of those billionaires, according to Google. Don't come for me if they're off by a million or two. Now, how many people are there in the world? Well, after another quick Google search, I found that as of 2019, there are 7.6 billion people in the world. Well, now let's just do the math. Divide the combined net worth of the billionaires of the world between the billions of people that are in the planet. Let's do the math. And you get a whooping $236 per person. That's pretty much like a stimulus check, which means you can almost pay a 1 month's rent here in California. Yay. But then what would happen next? That money wouldn't change people's lives, let's be honest. And even if you made the argument that we should only divide the billionaires' wealth among the very needy and not among the entire world, that would still not have the life-changing impact this tweet implies. Which makes me think that people who tweet things like this are not as concerned for the needy as they are annoyed that billionaires exist. So what is the solution to helping the needy? I mean, you can come up with a bunch of schemes like taxing everybody and dividing the spoils. But the reality is that the best way to make sure people are taken care of is to let each person take care of themselves. And sure, there are a lot of homeless people in the world, but the circumstances of how each one of them ended up in homelessness are very unique to each one of them. The reality is that most people are perfectly capable of taking care of themselves, of working to feed themselves and to keep a roof over their heads. And that is the way it should be. Each person taking responsibility for their own life. It just seems outrageous to place the responsibility of saving all the people in the world on the shoulders of a few people, in this case, billionaires. Instead, each of us should place the responsibility of our own life on our own shoulders. And yes, making a living is much easier in some countries than it is in others, but the same principle applies. Even if you divided the entire wealth of the world among all the people in the world, that would not fix anything, because wealth cannot just be distributed, it needs to be produced, which means each person needs to be producing wealth. That job cannot be left in the hands of just a few people. That's what's not sustainable. Which is why each person should try to produce as much wealth as they need for themselves. But now let's pause for a second. Perhaps this person does not plan on redistributing the wealth of the billionaires among the poor. Perhaps their idea is to take the money from the billionaires and use it to develop social programs. But again, what kind of program could you develop that is more efficient than allowing all the people in the world to work and provide for themselves? which is another reason why totalitarian governments need to get out of the way of the citizens' lives and let them work. Stop putting barriers in front of them, such as expensive business licenses and many other regulations. Okay, and here's another thing we're talking about. Why are these billionaires holding on to the wealth? Why aren't they spending it in lavish parties every weekend? And why even the most charitable of them only give a small portion of their wealth away? Well, I have a theory about that. And again, I'm not an economist and I've never had a business, but this is just me speculating, okay? You know, if you have a business and let's say you're a small business owner, you know, like a coffee shop, and each month you make $5,000 in profit. I feel like in order to run a business, you need to hold on to a portion of your wealth in case things go wrong with your business. So let's say if you are making $5,000 in profit every month in a coffee shop, you should at least have, I don't know, $10,000 as backup in case one month your business suffers and you're not selling any coffee. You know, you don't want to lose your business. You still want to be able to pay your employees, so you use some of that backup money to, you know, handle a crisis that your business is going through. In the same way, you know, people who own billion-dollar businesses, they're making, I don't know, millions of dollars every month. Like it makes sense that they hold on to a lot of that wealth in case something goes wrong with the business. It doesn't just go on there. They can use some of that money to damage control. But again, I don't own a business. I don't know anything about business. That's just a theory. And you know, I think another one of the reasons that inspires people to tweet things like this is that they don't believe that you can become a billionaire without having stolen from someone or scammed someone. It just doesn't make sense to them that you could amass that much wealth without having done something wrong. But the reality is that for the most part, billionaires are people who are just really good at making business. They're not doing things much more different than the small business down the street, you know, the small coffee shop down the street. They're following the same business model for the most part. They're just doing it in a mass scale. For instance, let's take the example of Amazon. The profit logic that applies to Amazon is the same logic that applies to the business on the street. You know, when a product is sold, some of that money goes to paying your facility, some of that money goes to paying your employees, some of that money goes into buying more of the same product, and a small portion of that is a profit. The only difference is that Amazon has figured out a way to do this process millions of times a day, every day. So of course, when you're making millions of sales every day, all the time, at every second, of course your tiny profits for each that you get for each product are going to add up into millions and then billions of dollars. But of course, Amazon is not the only one benefiting from this system. There are millions of vendors who have been able to grow their business, to grow their wealth by using Amazon's platform to sell their products. Thanks to Amazon, they can market their products to millions of people who want and need what they have to sell. Usually, when we know someone personally that's running a business and their business starts to thrive, we get excited for them. But for some reason, when someone else does it in a really large scale, like Amazon, we get triggered and we're like, yo, hold up. You're doing this too good. Like something's wrong. I don't like that. Why? Why do we have that reaction when a business is doing really, really good? Where's the logic in that? And of course, Amazon and the vendors are not the only ones to benefit from Amazon's success. Everyone that uses Amazon benefits from its existence. I mean, I still can't believe that I can order a pack of socks one day and then the next day it's already in front of my door and I didn't even have to leave the house. You know, it saves me so much time that I just get to spend watching my shows. Now, of course, there are other factors one can use when assessing big businesses, like are their business practices ethical? Are they lobbying in the government to squash the competition? Those are things worth scrutinizing, but for the most part, these businesses are just really good at business. Now let's talk about the morality of the proposal behind this tweet. I've always been under the impression that at least here in the United States, we uphold property rights because nobody likes getting the stuff that they work hard to get taken away from them. So why do we think it's okay to violate the property rights of billionaires? After all, they're just people who are really good at making money. Is there like a scale that says like the more money you make, the least your property rights will be respected? And who gets to decide at what point how much you have to make for your property rights to start being ignored? The government, the internet, Oprah? Who gets to decide? Who gets to decide how much is too much? And well, there's much more to be said about the subject regarding morality, but for now, I just want to ask you one question. If we didn't have the government to do our dirty work for us, and it had to be you who walks up to Jeff Bezos' house and asks for him to give up his money, what would you say to him? What would be your justification? Or would you forego worse and just show up with a gun and threaten to kill him unless he gives up the money? Because that's basically what the government does to all of us through taxation. Except instead of pointing a gun at us, they just threaten us with jail time. Now let's talk about that first part of that tweet that says, under capitalism, it's normal to let children go hungry, to let people lose their homes. You know, they phrased it in a way that it makes it seem like capitalism cost it. But the reality is that because capitalism can only exist in free societies, that also involves the freedom to take risks, which means sometimes you might fail in your ventures. For instance, if you live in a free society, you have the freedom to decide when you want to buy a house. And sometimes people might decide to buy a home when it's not financially feasible for them, so they end up losing their home. But the alternative is to live in a society where you don't have the freedom to do what you want, where you're not allowed to take risks in the name of keeping everybody equal. Now let's talk about another thing, the intention behind that tweet. Perhaps this person that tweeted this does not hate billionaires. Perhaps they are just really trying to come up with a way to make the world a better place. And this was what they came up with. I mean, I think we would all like for people to live good lives and not suffer. But the reality is that we are not weak creatures that need to be constantly helped in order to sustain our lives. Aside from people with extreme disabilities, we are all perfectly capable to work to sustain our own lives, which is the real solution to the problem of poverty. It is an unreasonable thought to place the well-being of all human beings on the shoulders of a few people. Like I said before, we should all place the responsibility of our own life on our own shoulders. And that way we won't be a burden to others. Not that there's anything bad in asking for help, just you need to know that you're not entitled to it. And yes, I think that the best system to allow people to work and create wealth is capitalism. And sure, there are a few billionaires who inherited their wealth, because there's nothing wrong with being able to decide who inherits your money after you die. But there are also a lot of self-made billionaires. Just think about that. Being able to do business and to innovate and to make lots of money is something that is only possible under capitalism. Okay, now before I sign off, I want to read you another tweet that also went viral and that ended up on Reddit, and that also made me go like, oh my God. It's this one. It says 9 billionaires gained 360 billion in the pandemic, and it's, you know, listing how much each one of them donated. You know, Gates gave 7%. Wow. And at the end, it's like, just tax them. Again, it's like as if taxing them would solve what? And how much are you gonna tax them? When will it be enough? It's very entitled, you know, the tone behind the tweet. And sometimes it makes me think that their intention is not just to make billionaires give money to the poor. Their hope is that, you know, when billionaires are taxed, maybe I'm gonna get some of that cash too. That's a lot of what's behind the mentality of people these days. Like, what can I get out of someone who's doing better than me? The assumption here is that you're gonna find some secret formula, some secret percentage that is finally going to solve poverty. I mean, you could tax them 90% and that would still not solve poverty. A small group of people cannot save the entire world just by giving up their money. That's not the solution. The solution is let people work. And I don't think it needs to be said, but I'm gonna say it anyways. Just because we free market advocates are against taxes does not mean we're against charity. What we are fighting is the violation of individual rights in the name of the greater good. Even if taxes were abolished overnight, that would not take away our empathy. Many of us would still choose to help people if we had the means to do it. Anyway, that was it for the video. I know there's a lot more that could be said, especially about capitalism, how it works, how business works. But you know, I just wanted to discuss some of the most salient points. And yeah, I mean, I'm gonna try not to do too many political videos in this channel because that's not the purpose of the channel, but you know, every now and then it's okay. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and I'll be back soon with another video. So thank you for watching.